There we go. Okay, we all know the competitive situation, and if you look at the market with the new competitors that have been coming in over the last few years, in essence attacking the $1.4 trillion world telecom services market, things are changing. And a lot of these new competitors don't have the burden of a legacy network. They don't have to provide emergency level services. They don't have the big platforms that all of our legacy service providers have. And as a result, they've got more free cash flow. And that's dangerous for legacy service providers. We also are familiar with this one where some will call it a march toward commoditization, where ARPU is going down in every single market. But even more dangerous is when you look at market share and ARPU spread. So the spread between the largest and the smallest providers in a given market, in a given region, from a market share perspective and from an ARPU perspective, it too is moving toward commoditization. In some markets faster than others. So this is the material economic problem that I think the industry faces. It's how do we overcome this? Because if we move toward commoditization, margins go down, you have less money to invest, it's not a good situation to be in. So if you look at service differentiation, and I'll just click through all these, the idea is to provide high quality differentiated services. And a number of large service provider executives have recently told me they recognize that technology is becoming the same as we have common standards and more openness. That also adds toward commoditization. So the focus has got to be on service differentiation. The combination of service differentiation and bringing new services to market more quickly, which is a component of service differentiation. So instead of bringing a service in months, we have to bring a new service in days. Amazon brings new production level software to their offering about every 14 seconds. So obviously we're not going to get to that point, but it was just a few years ago when, and I think in some cases it's still the case, where it might be a year or two to bring a new service to market, where service providers might be multi-generations behind in software releases from a key vendor. And as a result, it's hard for them to provide the new services. So we've got to go from months to days in service rollouts. That also needs to help, that also is a major component to help us drive costs down to bring these new services to market. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of how this is an area where we can help. And the key, again, is service differentiation. So this first example is with a Tier 1 operator where they're trying to improve their customer experience. And a recent study by Ernst & Young showed that telecom executives think, 2/3 of them think that their #1 strategic priority is improving customer experience. Looking at providing a service, running a network, but from the consumer's eyes. What's their experience? So this Tier 1 service provider bought in 2014 and 2015 2 different legacy wireless service providers. They merged them together and built a service differentiation platform on top of that that helps them from a device perspective, from a service perspective, from an app perspective, from a location perspective, understand their customer's experience, and then understand if there are any systematic issues, and if so, how do they deal with that and get ahead of it before a broad number of customers experience that problem. So they put an analytics platform in place. They used both a combination of passive probing and active probing to understand that experience. So if a customer's at using an Apple device, going to Google at a cell tower in Juarez, what's their experience? And is that experience a systematic issue, if they're having a poor experience or not? It then allows the executives to more quickly react to problems. A real-life example is this summer, there was a big earthquake down in Mexico. The network crashed, as you might expect. Within a few minutes, they were able to determine that the issue was not cell sites going down, towers falling over. In fact, it was an overload on the voice side of the network because everyone was calling to ask their friends and family, are you okay? So they shut down the data side and put all their resources onto the voice side. They were able to do that within a couple minutes. So as a result of what they've been able to do is they were able to increase their customers. So when they merged these two companies together just 2 years ago, they had about 8% market share. Today they're closing on 13% market share in a market that's growing very nicely. And their ARPU is almost 2x what their next closest competitor is. So they're able to differentiate themselves and grow their business. It's something that's worked really well for them. And again, the ROI is also very exciting. Another example is how do you bring up cell sites quickly? In this case, small cells. The objective here is rapid turn-up, automated turn-up of small cells. So once you're able to do that, you're able to use this same technology to help you troubleshoot problems. So by putting a advanced service assurance platform in place, they're able to first test that new cell site. In this case, it's a very large service provider with an objective of bringing up 100,000 small cells over a period of time. They're able to test out to those sites once they're physically put into place and understand if they have an issue. And can you avoid a manual truck roll, or do you have to send somebody out there to find that problem? So by automating this, they had an 80% reduction in their truck rolls. All right? Significant cost savings. ROI was extremely good. In this case, less than 6 months. They're in the middle of this. There's a 10x increase in the number of small cells they can activate in a period of time. And as a result, they can bring new services to market much more quickly. Okay. So again, automation. In this case, it's using, obviously, software to make this happen. But it's not necessarily a virtualized platform yet. So another example, in this case, it's a wireline service provider that's trying to get into a new space. So here they're trying to get into the enterprise or business customer space. Their objective is to use virtualization to make this happen. So they're using white boxes. This is something that's up and running right now. They're in the middle of deployment. They're using white boxes at the POPs, where they're deploying these devices that then host a virtual test agent to allow them to do layer 2 and layer 3 testing. In the future, allows them to do up to layer 7 testing. And in the future, will allow them with virtual CPE or universal CPE type devices, allow them to put these virtual test agents all the way out at the customer location. So not only can they turn up a new service much more quickly at a much lower cost, and again, that gets them the revenue much more quickly, but then they can also isolate issues and troubleshoot issues more effectively and more quickly. This has allowed them to bring their mean time repair down significantly. It allows them to roll out new services much more quickly. And again, it's something that they have underway right now in thousands of sites is what this rollout will be when completed. Again, very quick turnaround. The accelerated of the service activation is somewhere in the range of 7x what it had been. So pretty effective series of ways where the focus is on automation. The focus is on using virtualization to help you automate. And what that does is it helps you to lower your cost and be more competitive. So the focus being on what's your customer's experience. Am I happy with the rollout? Am I getting what I want when I want it? If we run networks from that perspective, is the customer getting what he wants when he wants it? I think we'll be able to differentiate services a lot better. So I know we're behind a little bit, so I'm going to roll up with this last slide, but we call this Lifecycle Service Assurance. So the idea is from the first concept to the design to the onboarding of a new service, how you're maintaining it and operating it through the network, the whole life cycle. Can you make this effective for your customer and efficient for you? Hardware providers learned a long time ago that designing in test when they're architecting a product is critical to success. If you try to design in test after you've designed a product, you're not going to find all the problems. You're not going to get to general availability quickly. And the same applies with a service. So the earlier you can design in a test into that service offering, the more efficient and effective your platform will be. So this allows you to differentiate and allows you to have a defensible and a scalable solution to that material economic problem I talked about at the beginning. And that's the objective, is something that scales and something that's defensible. So by tying together analytics into open source, on top of that into orchestration, with controlling of the services, rolling out tests that can be virtualized and can operate in a physical environment or a pure virtual environment, or the environment we're in today that's hybrid, using both active testing and passive probing gives you a holistic view of the network and allows you to make much quicker decisions and get to market much more quickly for your new services. Okay. That's my talk, and I'm sticking with it. Thank you.
Dave, I'm not sure how you did this, but you actually finished early. So you don't get to leave the stage. I have a couple questions for you. And then anybody from the audience has a question, so stay up here.
Sure.
Sorry. So I think I've talked with you or other folks at Spirent about this. You mentioned tying in the analytics. And this is all moving toward automation and closed loop systems, right?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so by gathering, we all know that service providers have used data and analytics for years and years and years. The key is, how do you take all this data? Because in some cases, you have billions and billions of records that need to be analyzed daily. So what are you using as your data sources? How are you setting up the rules to gather that data? And then how are you data modeling that in dashboards at various levels in the company? So the example I gave earlier, the CTO at that company, he gets a dashboard every day that tells him what's going on and where the hotspots in the network are. And his people are ahead of that, and they can quickly tell him what they're doing about it. Is it a router that's down? Are we having a new device problem? Is it a service issue with a specific device? And they react much more quickly.
Okay, and when does this become sort of self-healing? When do you get this so the analytics then trigger automatic action without people having to be involved?
Yeah, I think it's to a degree happening now, and part of it is, how do the NOCs operate with all this information?
Okay.
So if the analytics can help you identify different categories of trouble tickets, you can maybe push them to a different category of NOC operator.
Okay.
And make it much more easy to instead use your expensive people to do something. Perhaps it's something that they shouldn't open a trouble ticket on at all.
Okay.
You can also find ways to use that information to then do active testing out to a site.
Okay.
And double check to make sure that it isn't a site-specific problem, or at least isolate it.
Okay. All right, Ray, did you have your hand up back here?
Is this working? Let's see. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so Ray from Light Reading. So I'm interested in the fact that there's already an automated process going on here in terms of analytics being used to, automate that service assurance. But have there been any advances in the way that the information is gathered or fed from the network into the analytics systems?
Yeah.
Because I was speaking to BT the other day, and they said that one of the challenges they have is they're still having to poll the network for the data, but they want the data from the network to be streamed into their analytics system.
Exactly.
Where are we with that process?
I think historically it's passive probing where they're getting that data polling from. When you combine active testing with that, where a rule might be in place that if we're experiencing a problem, the network knows to send out an active test, whether it's a layer 2, layer 3, or service level test, and then react from that. So that's, in some cases, being automated right now. So it's that combination of passive polling or probing and active testing.
Okay. Did that answer your question? A little bit? Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. All right. So we are actually 3 minutes early, so you're going to get 3 minutes longer break. But here's the deal I'm going to make with all of you. This is our final. Well, first of all, hang on. Join me in thanking Dave. Okay.
For the 3 minutes.
Yes, for the 3 minutes especially. But if you could all be back here at promptly in your seats at 11 o'clock. We have, we have a wonderful presentation on security, which is an overriding issue for everybody. And I saved the very best panel for last, get you all to come back in here. So please don't miss the very best panel of the entire event. So we're going to have one more presentation and that panel, and your last chances to comment. Please be back in your seats at 11 o'clock.